The CEO almost ignored the man at first. From the 42nd floor of Malhotra Systems headquarters, the lobby looked like a moving painting of suits, screens, and security badges. Arav Malhotra stood behind the glass wall of the boardroom, half listening to quarterly revenue numbers. When something felt wrong, not loud, not dramatic, just wrong in a way only instinct understands. Near the visitor check-in stood a single father holding the hand of a small girl. The child clutched a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ear was bent. The man wasn't speaking. Instead, he was signing, slowly, carefully. And when Arav's eyes focused, his blood turned cold because the signs were not casual or conversational. They were deliberate, trained, desperate. "Help me," the man signed. "He has a weapon." Arav's heartbeat stayed steady, but his mind accelerated. No one else noticed. No guards reacted. No alarms sounded. But Arav knew this language better than most people knew their own voices. He'd grown up with a deaf mother. Sign language was not just communication to him, it was survival. And this was not ordinary sign language. This was a silent distress code taught only in high-risk security environments. Arav calmly closed his laptop, ended the meeting without explanation, and walked toward the elevator as if nothing had happened. His watch vibrated once as he triggered a silent internal protocol. No alarms, no panic, just systems quietly waking up. By the time he reached the lobby, the man's hands were trembling. The child's eyes were wet. Arav stopped beside them and spoke aloud in a friendly, public tone. "First time visiting the building?" Then, without changing his expression, he signed back, "I understand. Stay calm, don't run." The man's relief was instant and heartbreaking. He signed quickly, "My name is Daniel. That security guard near the desk isn't real. He followed us inside. He has a knife. He said if I spoke, my daughter wouldn't leave this building." Arav's peripheral vision locked onto the guard, uniform slightly off, posture too stiff, eyes scanning exits instead of screens. Arav nodded subtly and continued talking out loud about visitor passes while signing instructions. "Walk with me. Normal pace. Keep her close." As they moved, Arav positioned himself between Daniel's daughter and the guard, casually slowing the group. Elevators paused. Doors locked silently. Cameras adjusted angles. The guard noticed something was wrong too late. When he reached for his belt, security doors sealed him into an empty corridor, and trained responders arrived in seconds. No screaming, no chaos, just control. Daniel collapsed to his knees once it was over, holding his daughter as if the world had almost taken her. Later, in a quiet conference room, Daniel explained everything. He was a widowed military interpreter. His wife had been killed 2 years earlier. He had come to the building for a job interview. The man posing as a guard was part of a trafficking network that targeted single parents who wouldn't draw attention. Daniel had learned the distress signs during overseas service and recognized the only chance he had was silence. Arav listened without interrupting, feeling the weight of every word. The next day, the story broke worldwide, but not the way people expected. Arav didn't talk about heroism. He announced a new global initiative for silent emergency communication, training, and hired Daniel to lead it. The little girl, Emily, hugged Arav before leaving the building, whispering thank you. That night, alone in his office, Arav stood before an old photograph of his mother and signed softly, "Your language saved a life today." The world saw a powerful CEO stopping a threat, but what truly stunned everyone was the truth beneath it. That sometimes the loudest cry for help is made without a sound, and sometimes the right person is listening. Months after the incident, the building felt different, not quieter, but more aware, and Daniel felt it the moment he walked back into Malhotra Systems, not as a frightened visitor this time, but as the head of a new global program. His daughter Emily walking beside him with a confidence that still surprised him. Because trauma doesn't vanish, it transforms. And Daniel's transformation began the day Arav gave him a chance instead of pity. The program launched faster than anyone expected. Training executives, receptionists, drivers, teachers, and even children in silent distress communication. And within weeks, stories began surfacing from around the world, an airline attendant preventing a kidnapping using hand signals, a hotel clerk alerting police without alarming a violent guest, a school counselor saving a runaway teen, and the media called it revolutionary. But Daniel knew the real revolution was something quieter, something internal, because every class he taught forced him to relive that day in the lobby. Every demonstration brought back the weight of Emily's hand in his. And one evening after a long session, he found Idrav standing alone in the training hall watching a video replay of a simulation. Gone wrong! And for the first time since they met, Daniel saw not a CEO, but a man carrying old grief. And without thinking, he signed, "You learned this young." And Arav didn't deny it, only nodded and replied, "My mother taught me to listen with my eyes." And in that moment, Daniel understood why fate had chosen that building, that hour, that man. But the story didn't end there, because the trafficking network was larger than authorities first believed. And weeks later, Daniel received an anonymous message containing a photo of Emily at school taken from across the street, followed by a single line, "Silence didn't save you forever." And fear returned sharper than before. But this time Daniel didn't freeze. He documented everything, sent it through the secure channel Arav had built, and within hours a coordinated operation unfolded across 3 cities, dismantling the network entirely, rescuing dozens of children. And when the arrests were announced, the world praised technology, leadership, and intelligence. Yet what stunned everyone most was when Daniel stepped in front of cameras and said, "The hero isn't power or money. It's understanding." And he lifted Emily into his arms and continued, "If one person in a crowd understands your silent fear, you are never truly alone." And that statement echoed far beyond headlines, entering classrooms, workplaces, and homes, changing how people looked at small gestures, trembling hands, and quiet eyes. And on the anniversary of the day it all began, Arav hosted a private gathering in the same lobby, now redesigned with open spaces and subtle signage teaching basic emergency signs. And as guests mingled, Emily walked up to the glass wall, looked out at the city, and signed clumsily but proudly, "Thank you for listening." And Arav smiled, signing back, "Thank you for speaking without words," knowing that what happened next would never again stun the world the way it once did. Because the world was finally learning how to see. Years later, the ripple from that silent moment in the lobby had grown into a global movement. And Daniel sometimes struggled to believe how far life had carried him and Emily, because the fear that once followed them like a shadow had slowly been replaced by purpose. And on a rainy evening in London, during an international summit on human safety, Daniel received a message that made his hands go cold. Not a threat this time, but a live video feed from a crowded subway platform where a teenage boy was subtly signing the same distress signal Daniel had once used, "Help me, he has a weapon." And before panic could spread, a woman across the platform responded in sign language, calm and precise, guiding the boy towards safety as trained personnel moved in. And Daniel watched the situation resolve in minutes, realizing with a quiet ache that the world had learned to listen without sound. Later that night, standing beside Arav on a balcony overlooking the city lights, Daniel admitted that for the first time since his wife's death, he no longer felt like he was running from fear, but walking ahead of it. And Arav, older now but still steady, replied that leadership was never about being the loudest voice in the room, but about noticing the ones no one else hears. And when Emily, now a confident teenager, joined them and signed, "I want to teach too," Daniel felt tears he didn't hide, because the legacy was no longer his or Arav's, but hers. And in the years that followed, children learned silent safety alongside math and language. Buildings were designed to respond to gestures as quickly as alarms. And somewhere in a crowd every day, someone afraid raised their hands in silence, and someone else answered. And though the headlines eventually faded, the truth remained unshaken. A single moment of understanding between strangers had rewritten countless futures, proving that silence, when truly seen, could be louder than fear and stronger than any weapon. Decades later, long after the headlines had yellowed and the world had moved on to newer crises, the impact of that silent exchange still lived in places no camera ever reached. And Emily, now an adult, stood in a modest community hall in a small coastal town, watching a room full of parents, teachers and children mirror her hands as she demonstrated the same signs her father once used in fear. Because what began as a survival instinct had become a language of trust. And though Daniel was gone now, his presence followed her in the way she paused to make sure every child understood, in the patience she showed the nervous ones, and in the quiet strength she carried without realizing it. After the session, a young boy lingered behind, eyes darting, fingers twitching as if unsure whether he was allowed to speak. And when he slowly signed for help, not danger but confusion and loneliness, Emily knelt to his level and answered without words, understanding that safety wasn't always about weapons or threats, but about being seen. And years later, when Arav Malhotra's name appeared in history books as a visionary, leader who changed global safety culture, Emily knew the truth was simpler and more powerful. That a man had once looked through a glass wall and chosen to pay attention, and on the final page of her own life's work, a book taught in schools worldwide, Emily wrote a single line that outlived all speeches and systems. The world changed the day someone listened to silence, and in that quiet truth, the story finally found its rest.